This is a lesson adding and subtracting integers using a number line, and this is our number line. Uh, Remember, when you are adding and subtracting using a number line, when you're adding a positive integer, okay, you always go to the right of the number line, and when you're adding a negative integer, you always go to the left of the number line. So let's take a look at an example and see how this works. In second grade, when you were asked to add 2 plus 1, okay, you know that the answer is 3. And using the number line, okay, right here, okay, first we find 2, okay, and 2 is 2 units from 0. So we go from 0 to 2, so that's 2. And we add 1, so that means we're adding positive 1. That means we go 1 unit from 2. And that's how you end up with 3. Okay. Another example that we can do is, let's say you are asked to add 3 plus negative 4. Now you're asked to add a negative integer to positive 3. So let's get our number line. So this is our number line. Okay, and first from 0, we need to move to 3. So 3 units from 0 would be here. So that is 3. And then since you're adding negative 4, you're moving 4 spaces to the left. Okay, so 4 spaces to the left will bring you here. So 3, this is 3. Okay, plus negative 4 will give you to this number, which is negative 1. So 3 plus negative 4 is negative 1. Okay? Let's take a look at another example. Let me just copy this. Okay. So let's say you have now, you're asked to add negative 4 plus negative 5. Sometimes you put a parenthesis, sometimes not. You can put this in parentheses, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so you have negative 4 plus negative 5, and let's get our number line for negative 4 plus negative 5. Let me extend my page. There you go. So negative 4 plus negative 5, first you need to start at negative 4. So from 0, you go all the way to negative 4. And then since you are adding negative 5, okay, since you're adding negative 5, you're still moving 5 units to the left of negative 4, which will end up in negative 9. So negative 4 plus negative 5 will give you negative 9. Okay? So if you notice, when you are adding and subtracting integers, you can use a number line to do this. But did you also notice when you're adding and subtracting integers, when you're adding and subtracting integers, when you add two positive integers, okay, you basically add the integers and keep the sign of positive. Okay, so when you're adding two negative integers, you're still adding the integers, okay, and you're keeping the sign negative. But now when you're adding a positive and a negative, you subtract the integers, okay, and keep the sign of the higher number. And with it in the same manner, when you're subtracting a negative integer and adding a positive integer, you are also subtracting. Okay, so a few examples. Let's say if I have 3 plus 7, using the number line, we know that 3 plus 7 is 10. And if you have negative 2 plus negative 4, you're adding the two integers, and this becomes negative 6. Okay, and now let's take a look at this scenario when you have 5 plus negative 2. Again, it says subtract. Okay, so you get 5, and then you subtract 2, which is 3, and keep the sign of the higher number if you disregard the sign. So if you have 5 and negative 2, the higher number is 5, and its sign is positive, so it remains positive. And if you have negative, if you're adding a negative and a positive, let's say negative 4 plus positive 1, okay? Again, you have a negative, adding it to a positive, that means you're subtracting, okay? 4 minus 1 is 3, okay? But you keep the sign of the higher number, so 4 and 1, the higher number is 4, and the sign of 4 is negative, so this becomes negative 3. Okay, so that's one way of remembering when you're adding and subtracting. Okay, and when you are subtracting integers, you can do this as well. So when you're subtracting integers, there's one thing to remember. So when subtracting, add its opposite. So we know for a fact, let's review opposites. When you have 2, the opposite of 2 is negative 2. When you have negative 3, the opposite of 3 is 3. When you have 6, the opposite of 6 is negative 6. Okay, so let's take a look at this rule right here. So for example, if I have 3 minus 2, okay, it says there when subtracting, add its opposite. So 3 minus 2 is the same as 3 plus the opposite of 2 is negative 2. Okay, so 3 plus negative 2, we're back to adding integers. We know that if we get our number line, let me get that number line right there. Let me copy it. Okay. So 3 plus negative 2 is, if you review our number line, go first to 3. And then since you're adding negative 2, you go 2 spaces back. So this becomes 1. Okay, so 3 plus negative 2 is 1. Okay, so when you're subtracting integers, all you need to do is add its opposite. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say I have negative 3 minus 6. Okay, so let's follow that rule. When you're subtracting, add its opposite. So you're basically just changing, okay, the next number after the first one, not the first number or the first integer. So when you have negative 3 minus 6, okay, you're adding the opposite of negative 6. So you're basically negative 3. Sorry, you're adding the opposite of 6, which is negative 6. So you have negative 3 plus negative 6. And from what we learned on the last page, when you have two negatives, you're actually adding the integers. So this is now negative 3 plus negative 6 is negative 9. Okay, so you're adding the integers and keeping the sign. Okay, let me give you another example. If you have negative 2 minus negative 4, okay, again, when subtracting, you add its opposite. So you keep negative 2, and then you're adding the opposite of negative 4. So what is the opposite of negative 4? The opposite of negative 4 is 4. So you now have negative 2 plus 4. And from what we learned in the last slide, you have a negative and a positive. You're basically subtracting. So what's 4 minus 2? 4 minus 2 is 2. And the higher of the two numbers is 4, and the sign of 4 is positive. So negative 4 plus 4 is 2. So thus, negative 2 minus negative 4 is actually positive 2. Okay? Give me one more example. If you have negative 5, sorry, let's make this positive this time. Well, let's just do 5. 5 minus negative 7. Okay? Again, when you're subtracting, you're adding its opposite. So you keep the number 5, and then you're adding the opposite of 7, which is 7. So this is basically 5 plus 7, which is 12. So 5 minus negative 7 is actually 12. Okay? So another way to remember this is by following a song. And this song, okay, let me show it to you, will be very useful in trying to understand, okay, adding integers. And let's listen to this. This is a 1 minute 19-second song. Okay.
Different.
Oops. Sorry, let me start from the beginning. There you go.
Here is a song to help you remember how to add integers. Feel free to sing along. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Use the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact.
And hopefully that will haunt you for a few days. So you will remember how to add and subtract integers using a number line and using this particular song. Okay, so this is another way of adding and subtracting integers without using models. Okay, thank you for watching.